So we're joined in our election coverage studio by Mr. Omori Dogiawere, who is a legal practitioner. Good morning. This morning now. Thank you for joining us on our election coverage. I mean, we can smile right now, but for a lot of the voters we saw there, it was not a smiling matter. They were not happy. And this is in spite of all of the assurances they got, all of the expectations, high expectations. In fact, some people were actually persuaded to come out again for the governorship elections off of the experience they saw during the presidential. You were together with us. We analyzed that whole process. So it took a lot of persuasion to get people to come out to vote again. And listening to that woman telling our correspondents to actually stay back while counting is on, so that they are sure that the process is actually transparent.
She was even offering to cook.
To cook. I mean, it was very, very touching for me to hear that woman. She wasn't talking to security agencies. She wasn't talking to INEC. She was talking to a reporter. And I wonder, for you, going through this process a second time in 3 weeks, what sticks out for you? How are you internalizing all of this?
I think we all agree that there's a failure in that there's a serious trust deficit between the people and government and agencies of government. INEC is not immune. Right now, INEC is just taking the heat or the brunt because they are at the forefront of the activity going on now. But what is coming to bear is that there's no love lost, and the people do not trust government. The media, because they believe so much in the power of social media, in the power of coverage, they believe that you will help accentuate their voices. People are seeing, so to speak, what's going on. And so if there's any travesty, you put it out there. How did we get here? But that's a different kettle of fish. And I'll repeat again. You remember I pointed out the failure of the system today, the electoral process, is a failure of the fact that there's still a strong lack of consequences. I pointed out that there's so much fixation on who wins, who doesn't win, election petitions, 49 SAN, 19, 20, everyone is going to court. Very little is being done about prosecuting electoral offenders until there are consequences for the actions taken by people who subvert the will of the people. Until that is done, people will continue to act arbitrarily. Now let me take you to the Electoral Act. What does the Electoral Act say? It provides for electoral offenses, but it's very fluid on the process for prosecuting those offenses. You put 1 million naira fine or 6 months imprisonment, there's so much fluidity, and then it is silent on investigation, arrest, investigation, and prosecution.
How do you mean? I mean the ACJ, doesn't it deal with some of those processes of arrest?
So here's the thing. Electoral matters are exclusive to a particular purview. The Electoral Act gives INEC the power to prosecute electoral offenders exclusively, either through their in-house lawyers or lawyers appointed by them. Now, what is the logistic of arresting a person? So the police is handicapped, right? The only place where the police is able to act, right, is under the premise of ensuring the maintenance of law and order. And on the basis of that, they can effect arrests, they can, take certain action. But as far as electoral offenses are concerned, the power still falls within INEC. INEC has not finished conducting election. They have not, done what really will build the trust that we need to scale our electoral process. And then you now saddle them with prosecuting electoral offenses. We don't have any authority today of successful prosecution of electoral offenses. And so we finished the presidential election. There were so many pockets of violence, across the country, and the same perpetrators of those actions are repeating their actions 3 weeks later.
And we did see, some videos surface online, some people talking about, if you're not going to vote for this party, make sure you don't come out and all of that.
Did we not see that? Did we not see that during the presidential elections?
At some point.
But did we not see that during the presidential election? We saw that during the presidential election. We're seeing it during the governorship and House of Assembly.
But for that one, you don't need the Electoral Act to actually take action on those ones pre-election.
Because that is also, the issue of, violating, law and order.
Yes.
Which you said the police is constitutionally empowered to handle.
The offense that the individual is said to be committing is tied to the elections, is provided for in the Electoral Act. The only thing is that the Electoral Act is quite, for want of better language, lousy in the couching of the provision for arrest, investigation, and prosecution.
But can that video, for example, the one particularly saying people shouldn't come out, can it be used as evidence?
Of course.
Is that strong enough?
Of course. Our law allows for electronically generated evidence, right? So, yes, it can be used.
How do you confirm, the videos, like where the source and all of that?
So this is where trial happens during prosecution. Whether in civil or in criminal matters, things go through trial. The essence of trial is to authenticate the evidence before the court. And so it comes down to who can prove his case best, right? But let's not even look at authenticating or not authenticating. Let's look at the fact that people will continue to act if there is no consequence for their action. And until we begin to look, I was having a conversation before coming in, and one of the things that the person I was speaking to had raised was the need for an electoral offenses tribunal, and that in fact that law is still, locked in the works, because the bane of our elections fall around three things: voter intimidation, rigging, electoral violence. The only way to address these three things is to have a decisive framework for punishing people who fall within the ambits of this offense.
And definitely all eyes are on the judiciary, at this point. And what do you think the judiciary can actually do, at this point to gain the confidence?
So let me explain to you. I always say the judiciary is never on trial. The lawyers and the parties are on trial. And the courts are clearly not allowed. There's this saying that the court is not a Father Christmas, right? The courts are clearly not allowed to give judgments that are not asked of them.
I find that curious, pardon me, when you said the judiciary is not on trial, because it is said that, justice should not just be done, it must be seen to be done. So isn't that, some sort of trial in that sense?
So, case in point, the court cannot unilaterally wake up today and say, oh, there was violence in point A, and this video shows this violence. Let's
serve justice.
Serve justice. A case must be brought before it. You must prove your case. The prosecution must prove their case, right? And so until a proper framework is done, they're handicapped in that aspect. As far as the facts before, you see,
that must be painful because, like you said, you have to come before it. Even if the court sees and knows that, it actually happened, it can't speak, it can't do anything. I'm just thinking, how do you reconcile, your constitutional a role, and your personal and your own personal role, your personal conviction? How do you reconcile that gap, that pain, so to speak?
So, two things. The court is expected to be impartial. And you're expected to separate your personal leanings or emotions from the facts before you and the law that applies to those facts. I'll tell you, for instance, a person who commits an offense that subverts the will of the people, none of the electoral offenses in the Electoral Act today have more than a year imprisonment or a fine of 1 million naira to subvert the will of the people. Now, if you come before a court, the court can only punish you within the confines of the provisions of the law that punishes you. And so if you give the person an option of fine, and then the court of public opinion says the court has not done justice, how do you do justice outside the confines of the law that you are supposed to interpret?
Interesting point you raised there, but let's expand this conversation. We're being joined now virtually by Mr. Wokolundu, a security expert, joins us from London. Well, good morning. I know it's morning there. Thank you for staying up for this all-important assignment, this national assignment. Thank you. Well, I know you've been following the conversation, and this is your area. This is your area of strength, as it were. And the beauty about technology these days is it helps to even ensure that perhaps justice is done. There's more evidence. The evidence, you're able to at least prove it beyond reasonable doubt. From what you're monitoring, do you think there is enough evidence to build a case, at least for parties who are saying, well, our voters are being suppressed, we have voter intimidation here and there? Do you think there's a solid case, at least, for them to approach the courts and ensure that this whole process, they get justice from it?
Sure. Even though I'm not a lawyer, my friend, the lawyer there, has established a lot of grounds to show that there are grounds for parties that feel aggrieved by what may have happened to approach the court. But however, I think we have more than enough, not just from what we could see from the social media, but as well as some of the things most of the parties may have recorded. It's everywhere. It's everywhere, and it's disturbing. It's disturbing that that we've gone back to things that we thought that we've escaped. So if we look at what happened in 2015, when we had the election in 2015, between which a lot of us thought it was going to be almost like the end of the country, and it didn't go that way, with President Jonathan conceding. Didn't go to court, didn't fight anything, and conceding and allowing President Buhari to take over the mantle of leadership. We thought, yes, we're beginning to build a step. Because what I tell people is that it's not just about who wins, it's about the process and how we confine legitimacy. I think with us going back to a place we thought we were not going to be again in 2019, and because we didn't do much, and that's why we could see what have escalated again in 2023, as we can see. If I'm to build on what my friend the lawyer there said, impunity works where the law does not really punish people very well, and we could see that, and you could see from places like Lagos, where we saw that level of violence in 2019, and there seems not to, the law haven't done much. You could see that other parts of the country have really borrowed the lead from Lagos and expanded on the whole issue. So 2019, it was Lagos and Rivers that a lot of people were so worried about. But we could see now that other parts of the country have really borrowed leave from Lagos and Rivers, because so if they were not punished, why should we be punished? So, and that's the way most of these things work.
Do our election security design is something we have talked about. We've spoken to, security operatives before elections, and they have a way they describe it to you that, there's what happens at the polling unit, there's the inner ring, there's the outer ring, and they walk you through that process. But I don't know, have we been able to design our security such that it caters to our peculiarities? This is a question I ask a lot, because at the polling units you have officers who do not bear arms, but it's the same polling units you have hoodlums coming to attack, sometimes with arms. So I don't know, are we designing a system for the election we're having, or what exactly? Have you tried to troubleshoot it? Where do you think the challenge is exactly?
I remember 1st of September 2022, I sat beside Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, and I kind of explained to him and members of INEC what would be the likelihood, what it will likely happen, how it will happen. I did a permutation, drew some analysis, did mapping of how most of these things will play out. And INEC will always tell you that they don't control the security. That's true. But the question could be, because this is a system, institutions work together. They are all a system, because the most important thing is to provide that public good. So if they fail, or if the other institutions that are supposed to work with them fail in their ability to provide that public good, so we would not say that INEC didn't fail because it was not their responsibility. Of course, everybody knows that there's this committee of other agencies that are supposed to work with INEC to provide that security around the election. They've gone through most of these things. But if you sit down and do a deep think, a deep dive into the entire scenario, you will come to the understanding that there are pieces of information that are missing, and these are very crucial to the entire thing. Then the question you might be asking yourself, how could we as a country at this stage of our life and not conduct a simple election, because we allow hoodlums, we allow political thugs to take over and man everything, disrupt everything that we've taken years to build and to walk through, So for an instance, like I've always argued, these things are simple human understanding. I'll give you an instance. As the election demography is changing, as the power parity between political parties are changing, parties are more likely to find ways, whether legally or illegally, to win an election. So we're not interested in how legal they want to win an election. We are interested in how illegal they want to win an election, especially for those of us who want to make sure that everything is done rightly. So let's take a case in point, Lagos. Before 2015, the likelihood of you having violence in Lagos at the level we have it will not likely be there. Why? Various reasons. One is because the power parity between the dominant party in the state and the other parties were far apart. So they will always win because they are the dominant party. A lot of people want to vote them in, or one way or the other, they find ways to get things sorted out. Now, with the introduction of election technology and with the election management body trying to bring in other variables, other things to make the election freer and fairer in nature, they will start looking for processes or other means of making sure they win. And this could include other forms of voter suppression. Now, with demography, more young people coming in, it means that one other form of voter suppression they will start going towards is electoral violence. These things are key. At least we experienced it in 2019, because in 2019, they found out that they needed to win Lagos by all means. We saw the kind of violence they deployed. Because why? Because the power parity between them and the other parties were closing. And then in 2023, we saw that it has nearly closed, or the others are even taking over from them. So these things are easy to know. So for you to build your kind of analysis or network around this is to do your mapping. And doing your mapping means trying to find out where are the likely places that the dominant party will like to commit their havoc, knowing that, of course, they have their stronghold. Each party have their stronghold. So mapping all these things will help you to say, okay, who has the ability to unleash violence on the other person? And in that case, you do not work with the perpetrator, you work with the victim. Because the perpetrator will always have means and arms over the other person. And that's what we had expected INEC to do. You do or INEC or the security management bodies that work with them, the police, the army, the military, and so on. For an instance, let's take Lagos again. The likelihood that hoodlums will attack APC stronghold is less compared to the likelihood that they will attack the stronghold of the other parties, maybe say the Labour Party or the PDP. That's one. And the next question, where are these stronghold of these parties? In Lagos now, we know they are likely to be places like Okota, Tulere, Ojo, so on. So when you do your mapping, you will not say, okay, how do we deploy? How do we work with the communities? How do we work with the local government to say, we need to cut off here? But because even on that day, you've already said no movement. You try to restrict movement to a certain area. You work with these people. You have all these records. Now, that's where a lot of people will now come in to say, there's no even political way to do the right thing. Did we sit down to ask ourselves, do we have the political will to make sure that this election is free and fair, without fear and favor, or without people being so scared that they wouldn't want to come out to vote? I don't think these things were taken into consideration, because if they were taken into consideration, we saw it happen 2 weeks ago. So what did we do to stop it from happening 3 weeks after? That's a big question. And with us not doing anything in Lagos, we saw what happened in Enugu, in Rivers, in Abia, in Ebonyi. So everybody is going bizarre, doing what everybody wants to do, because, there's no sheriff in town. So everybody is running amok, doing what everybody wants to do. And what is this doing? This is affecting our psyche as a nation. And I've always told people, this 2023 election was opportunity for Nigeria to get a lot of things right. It's not about who won. It's about the process, trying to bring back that nationhood, that Nigerian thinking back. We've lost it. We've really lost it. We've gone back almost 40 years back. I don't know how we're going to get this thing back. Most young people who are beginning to think back, start thinking Nigeria, watch the next 2 months. You'll find a lot of them at the airport trying to find their way out. I am disappointed, really disappointed.
Mr. Ndu, I mean, it's good you took us, through that journey, putting things side by side, talking about how they could have, come together, have a parley, discuss, say, okay, this is what we saw during the presidential and National Assembly elections, how do we forestall them? One would wonder or even argue or even say that, the security apparatus, which in this instance, the police is pretty much, the one at the forefront, one will be looking at their capacity, one in numbers, two, equipment, of course, hopefully, they are well equipped to stand and march those hoodlums, on the basis of how they come. So let's look at the capacity. Let's look at, in this election, we have about 175,000 or over 175,000 polling units. How would you say the police is equipped in terms of numbers now, to deploy, even if it means armed officers, say because you certainly can't post only one officer, to a polling unit and expect him to stand up to all of those numbers of hoodlums, of people that we see coming to polling units and, making that mess. Would you say the police is well equipped to march these people, during elections?
So there's a committee, the Security Election Committee, that work with INEC, and it's not only the police; it includes the army, the Civil Defense Corps, the immigration, and all of them. There's so many of them. Now, if they had done what some of us thought they would be doing, you sit down and do your mapping. You know the high-risk areas. You know the hot points. There are places you don't really need to post people to. You can post maybe guys from immigration, customs to go there, just to make sure that things are okay. For an instance, I want to be giving an example so that it will come down. Let's take Lagos again. If you go to places like Ikoyi, maybe Victoria Garden City, where you look at the risk involved, what is the likelihood that they will attack. In those places, you can just post maybe a police officer and the other sister agencies to work with them. Then you go to the places where the havoc will be done. These are the places you beef up very well. So all these things is about taking your resources and knowing how to position them. And most times when people say we have about 350,000 police officers, so if you remove those who have been given to politically exposed persons, the other numbers, if you look at them, there's a way you schedule your posting. We all know the high risk areas. We all know where you could post them. Yes, I understand that the number may not just be that much, but it would have been enough, to at least deter them. Because if you have a map of a city council, a local government, say Itiosa or say one of the local councils, and you work with the local government, the major roads leading into places where you think these are places you map out. Now, how are these things done in other countries? And I've given most of these instances. Police know most of these people. The DPOs know most of the hooligans within most of their communities. How they are done is that a week to the election, some of them are called in, either detained, because you know that because it's in their blood, it's in their DNA, they will do it. You pick them up, round them up, and keep them out. After the election, you release them. You can go to court and allow the court to give you a warrant to arrest them. You pick all of them up, 1,000 of them, keep them, because you know that you don't have the capacity to police all of them. But these are already known criminals. For instance, in the UK, I remember there was it France 1998? The UK police worked with the French police, identified football hooligans in the UK. They were warned not to go to France. Some of them were even picked up and detained because they knew that it's in their DNA that they will cross over and go to France and cause problem. So nothing stopped from picking they know them. They won't tell you they don't know them. They know all the hooligans. They knew all these political talks that would disrupt the election. So nothing stopped from bringing them in, telling them we are going to do a show of force. Like the president said, I remember President Buhari said, if you carry ballot box, you should be killed. Some of them will be brought in and be advised that, see, we are going to be here, we're going to splinter our men. If we see you coming to carry ballot box, anything that happens to you is your own fault.
Interesting points there, Mr. Nwokolo. And you know, about that, you know, the talk about some people perhaps being disappointed and wanting to leave the country. I mean, yes, people have a freedom to move wherever they feel they want to. But you know what they say, that we can't win if we keep quitting. So perhaps that can also be another watchword for Nigerians generally. But we'd like to thank you so much for your insights on the program. It's going to be quite a long wait till the results keep trickling in. So we do hope to touch base with you in the coming days. Mr. Nwokolo is a security expert and also a specialist on governance dynamics. Thank you so much for your time. You joined us from London this morning.